The Harry Potter remake, the one where Snape is going to be black, is going to be a TV series instead of a movie series. Until then though, there isn't really a fantastic way to make the old series fresh. Fan edits. On a base level, these are still the same movies from the movie series, but they're elevated enough by post-production fixes that it's pretty noticeably more consistent. I didn't want to say the word better, so I went with consistent. Anyway, the edit I watched was titled the Harry Potter Collection Edits, which it's not exactly creatively named, but it gets the point across, I guess. The main goals of the edits were to create lighter versions of the movies. Again, not really trying to reimagine or create anything new. There are more extreme fan edits out there, but I settled for these. And now I'm going to rank them alongside the first Fantastic Beast film, because why not? Harry Potter 7 Deathly Hallows Part 1. This was my breaking point during the rewatch, and I had to face a truth that's been blasted onto the internet for a good while now. The Harry Potter story does not have a fantastic plot. There are parts that are good, sometimes even great, but they're not enough. It all scratches at you until you can't stand it anymore. These issues were probably in the original books too, but something always managed to carry the movies before this. Carry them enough that I won't outright say that I dislike any other movie here. Sometimes it was the whimsical new magic. Other times, it was Ron making stupid faces. There was the cinematography and scoring that were better than they had any right to be. Heck, I'm even going to defend Goblet of Fire later because Voldemort was cool at the end. But Deathly Hallows Part 1 takes it too far. The plot sucks. Even Ron acknowledges it and leaves for a while. This movie is straight up boring, and I think I know why. In Harry Potter, something weird usually happens and you get an explanation in the next scene. It's not ideal setup and payoff, but it's functional. Here, something weird happens and we don't get an explanation until the next movie. The worst offender, that Patronus leading them to the Sword of Gryffindor, it honestly feels like J.K. Rowling just gave the trio what they needed because she forgot to tie Ron and Hermione's romance into the actual plot. Yes, the animated sequence was gorgeous and it made me wish the entire series was animated, but by that point in the movie, it wasn't enough. Harry Potter 8 Deathly Hallows Part 2. The final Harry Potter film stands tall on a pedestal built by 7 movies. Deathly Hallows Part 2 should be good based on that solely, but honestly, the wind was out of my sails during the rewatch. Part 1 was such a slog to get to that when the beginning still had the gang going to Gringotts and playing around with dragons and elves, I was completely checked out. The whole Horcrux hunting plot isn't the worst thing in the world, but the heavy tone weighed me down so much. Then they started explaining stuff that happened in the last movie like that still mattered. It all felt like a side quest that just wouldn't end. When we finally get to the main climax, the Battle of Hogwarts, Deathly Hallows gets more than good. The confrontation with Voldemort was pretty epic, even if the choreography was lacking. Again, 7 movies of build-up can make anything interesting, and I find that a little cheap. If those 7 movies weren't there though, oh boy, man, this would probably be the worst. I was tired at this point and couldn't fully appreciate it. Part 1 left such a bad taste in my mouth that even the cheesy epilogue genuinely makes me question if Harry Potter is even worth watching if you're above the age of 18. Harry Potter 4 Goblet of Fire. I sympathize with this movie's pain. Coming after the perfection that is Prisoner of Azkaban, it had the enormous job of fully transitioning the light whimsical tone into something dark and depressing, with that sudden death scene in the end and the revival of you-know-who. Then it had to also introduce the other schools to compete in a tournament with 3 challenges, each of which had the potential to be its own movie, while also making time for the ball, Hermione's spat with Ron, and also somehow including Ron's arc of not talking to Harry. It's mental, really, that the directors even tried to fit it all in. The fan edits I watched pulled out Ron's cold shoulder arc, but that honestly should have been in the original cut. As it stands, even with the fan edits, this marked the start of a low point in the series. You need to have read the books to have even a chance of understanding what's going on. If Goblet of Fire did one thing right, it's the tone transition. Voldemort's resurrection scene by itself will always be fantastically macabre, so, it gets bonus points. Harry Potter 1, Sorcerer's Stone. The first Harry Potter film, Ron making stupid faces, weird CGI, and plot points that straight up don't make sense if you take the latter movies into account. Yes, I've read all the books at least once, but that was before I had any real knowledge about writing. There will never be a good answer as to why Quirrell didn't just one-shot Harry. The weakest part of the movie is the midpoint, which is mostly devoted to just the setting, buying wizard stuff, exploring Hogwarts, going to school, meeting new people. I suspect that if the tone weren't so whimsical, the plot would feel pretty dry. But we can't just skip it either. This is the first glimpse into a series that spans 8 films. Right before the trio starts searching for the stone, the cinematography and effects really carry the movie. And it's not like there's zero emotional attachment. The introduction of the mirror is my favorite scene in the whole film. Near the end though, it leans a little too heavily on Dumbledore ASMR to explain things. Still, Harry Potter didn't spawn 8 movies for nothing, and the foundations for how deep or how seemingly deep the wizarding world goes were planted not immaculately, but good enough. Harry Potter 2, Chamber of Secrets. The early Harry Potter movies have a tendency to feel like stretched out Scooby-Doo episodes. Is that a bad thing? Not necessarily. In the books, the detective work is great with clues that even the reader can follow, but in the movies, you can't exactly rewind a few seconds to catch something you missed without breaking immersion. Once again, the cinematography and special effects do a lot of the heavy lifting. Aragog, the Basilisk, and basically every other CGI element look infinitely better than anything in the first movie. That said, we're still missing some of the emotional connection to the mysteries being solved. At this point, the story basically tells us that Voldemort wants to kill all the Muggles because he's racist, and well, there are a lot of racist people in the world. Voldemort gets better characterization, but for now, it's all pretty surface level. I also wish Malfoy's father had been there in the climax. He feels like a more compelling early villain than Voldemort Light. But I will never complain about Gilderoy Lockhart. That man was comedy gold. Ultimately, the first 2 Harry Potter films are just setting the stage for the rest of the series, so I cut them slack. Plus the nostalgia. Have I mentioned the nostalgia? Harry Potter 6, Half-Blood Prince. The Half-Blood Prince starts strong with the introduction of Professor Slughorn and Harry stepping into the role of Dumbledore's sidekick, but it fails at the most crucial part. When Snape says, "I am the Half-Blood Prince," what does that actually mean? It's been a while since I've read the books, but apparently Snape is half Muggle. His mother's last name was Prince, and none of this is even remotely explained in the movies. There's also a strange quirk I've noticed in the series starting here, where Harry has a habit of abusing old people. I swear, I'm going to make a compilation eventually. He does it twice in this movie alone. First, when he takes advantage of a drunken Professor Slughorn, and later when he basically makes Dumbledore drink Prime. I also have to note that while I'm not the biggest fan of the franchise's shift to a darker tone, including literally making the movies darker so that you can't see anything, the monochromatic setting in the final act is gorgeous. I honestly wish the rest of the films had more of this stylized presentation. Fantastic Beasts 1, the bonus on this list. Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them is what happens when a subplot doesn't quite interact with the main story. Newt and Jacob actually make a decent pair who work well together, but they have almost nothing to do with the whole obscurus and American Ministry of Magic plot. They don't even meet Credence until the climax, yet the movie tries to force a connection between Newt, somehow remembering his face. There is a backstory about Newt's travels and how he met an obscurial in Africa that honestly sounded like a prequel that should have been made before this movie. That's not even mentioning the seeds being planted for Grindelwald and World War II. The story didn't need to cross over with this dark magic business because, as the title says, fantastic beasts and where to find them. Newt Scamander is a zookeeper who studies magical creatures and writes a book that Harry Potter will eventually read in universe. I really think they should have focused on maximizing that premise instead of letting the subplot take over. Also, FYI, I am not watching the other Fantastic Beast movies. You cannot convince me. Harry Potter 5: Order of the Phoenix. The transition to a darker tone in the Harry Potter films is interesting. I've already said words about the other movies where the tone becomes a black hole, but I'll say that Order of the Phoenix is the only film in the franchise that's able to use this tone shift effectively. Professor Umbridge's main function is as a hate sink. She's basically there to be bait for the audience, but she's so effective as the Ministry of Magic's strong arm in Hogwarts. And damn, if her design isn't striking, I don't know what is. Bright pink, a twisted distortion of how colorful the previous entries were. This movie also marks the start of something the series never quite gets right: wizard battles. When Harry and his friends go to the Ministry of Secrets and we replace all the wands in the fight scene with guns, would there really be a difference? I know the books handle things differently, with the spells somehow feeling more cinematic than their cinema counterparts. We're talking about the movies though, and while it's not the end of the world, I'm more than a little annoyed. That said, Harry being a teacher was pretty cool. Harry Potter 3: Prisoner of Azkaban. I was not expecting this to be the best one. It's when the plot finally stops focusing on setting up the world and starts digging into something more personal. We meet all of Harry's uncles and his godfather, get glimpses into the real reason why Snape is so bitter, and see the introduction of the darker tone that will eventually define the franchise. The Dementors, in particular, are the stuff of literal nightmares. All of that would have been great on its own, but then the movie brings in the time travel element, and it goes from great to fan-flipping-tastic. Harry and Hermione don't just explain all the earlier coincidences and setups, they do them. It's like having your third eye open to a higher level of storytelling. Sure, the time turner is kind of a sloppy plot device, but in context of just this film, it doesn't do much to break the lore, unless you're really trying to poke holes. And when Sirius and Buckbeak ride into the horizon, I can't bring myself to critique the time travel that much. This is the best Harry Potter film, no questions. So that's all the films. Again, I'm hopefully never going to watch the third or fourth Fantastic Beast film. Future crack here. After the writing of this, my brother somehow convinced me to watch the second one, which I would put in as the new lowest movie of the franchise. Never going to watch 3 though. I will say that it wasn't as good a rewatch as I thought was going to be. Even with the fan edits, you might have noticed that I sound a little negative throughout all this. Nostalgia makes some fantastic rose-tinted glasses. I'll catch you on whatever I'm gonna make next, and thanks for watching.